Before we get started, please don't forget to like the video. Let's try to get over 50 likes in the first hour. The likes help the channel grow the most. So if you like this kind of, you know, open source, independent reporting and information that's starting to get bigger and bigger on the internet, then the best way to spread that around and share with other people is to like the video. So thanks for all of those of you that have already subscribed, and thanks for those of you guys that consistently like the videos. Okay, so first thing we're going to note is there has been a really, I'm not going to say like an extreme, but certainly an intensification of shelling on almost all points of contact on the front line. So from Mykolaiv all the way to the Zaporizhzhia front line, the entire Donbass, and of course the Severodonetsk salient, along with like the Izium bridgehead area, has seen a significant amount of shelling. And on top of that, the Russians continue to strike Ukrainian rail infrastructure in the western parts of the country. So Lutsk, I believe these strikes were close to the they're either military targets, they might be caches or stockpile, but they're probably closer to the train stations, because that's where a lot of these goods and supplies are offloaded. They make their way in from Poland, and they make it to these railroad hubs where they're taken off trains. You got trains shuttling things here, and then probably like the inventory of these things are taken, and they decide where they need to go from here, and then they ship them down the different routes to the different fronts. And another important strike, and you guys have probably seen pictures of this online. I didn't have any pictures of this ready for you all, but there was a strike on the rail infrastructure in Malin, and it looks like there's a massive crater in the middle of the tracks in this town, and I believe they also hit, like, several missiles hit this area. So probably this rail line going from I guess the original starting point of it is Kovel and goes to Kiev. That line is probably temporarily out of action. Now, rail lines can be fixed a lot faster than people realize. I actually, at one point when I was in my teen years, I worked for a not a railroad company. It was actually a state park, and they did like scenic rail stuff, but they did have trains. They had like a train yard, and they did maintenance on their own trains, and they also did track maintenance and stuff like that. And at one point, a train had actually derailed because of an issue with the track, and they managed to get the train back on the track and fix they did that within a few hours, and then they fixed the rail. Well, the problem was there's like a dip in the rail, and it caused the flange on the inside of one of the wheels to pinch the rail, and basically through like extreme pressure, the train climbed off of the tracks, and they were able to fix the track in another day. So that's significantly less extreme than having a crater in the middle of the rail, but railroad tracks are like relatively easy to do maintenance on. Like that's the point of saying that. So on top of that, there's basically continuous cross-border artillery battles going on in the Sumy area, in the Kharkiv area. And before we get into some of the frontline stuff, I'll talk about like the shelling going on in Mykolaiv, it seems like Mykolaiv took a real pounding over the last 2 days, and there's some information here about that. And if you want to pause this, I guess I can read it for you guys if you don't want to pause it. When we say that the regional administration of Mykolaiv is extremely negligent about the accounting and storage of secret documents, we are not distorting our souls at all. Among all the rubbish that litters the desks of these two people, there are really important documents, and some of them we share in a revised and easy to understand form. We have mapped all the objects of the armed forces of Ukraine, territorial defense detachments, and whatever that is. I guess that's probably like a slur, known to us on the map of Mykolaiv. It turned out to be such a simple scheme. The coordinates of already published positions are available by tags. Um, and then here's a link. This came from a Russian source, Rybar News, and this continues on. But the next part of this Telegram post is exact coordinates of Ukrainian defensive positions, which I'm not going to share with you guys. I'm not going to post that. That just seems completely unnecessary. But what this is the Russians are basically bragging. I'm assuming, and someone in the comments can confirm this. I'm assuming that these are the last names of administrative people, like maybe the mayor of Mykolaiv or the governor. I'm not sure, or the people on the Ukrainian side that are in charge. And it seems like the Russians are bragging about espionage here, and they're bragging about like stealing documents off their desks, which is, if true, foolish that the Ukrainians, let them get to those documents, but incredibly foolish that the Russians are bragging about it, because now, now there's awareness to the fact that there's agents within Mykolaiv, which, I'm sure the Ukrainians were probably already aware of, but whoever they are, they have access to offices that have maps. So I guess basically the Russians have stolen maps that mark Ukrainian positions, and in turn, there's extremely heavy shelling around Mykolaiv over the last few days. And okay, so since we're already here, starting like with the front lines and going around, there is rumors, and these are coming from the Russian side, but it's not. It doesn't seem too terribly hard to imagine based on like some of like the counterattacks and moves by the Ukrainians that have been ordered, personally by Zelensky. The Russians seem to think that Zelensky is ordering a counterattack to try and retake Kherson. And if you look at some other people's maps and some maps of like the military situation in here, it does seem like the Ukrainians have more troops than the Russians. But it appears that the troops in this area are not, the ones that are there are more fresh. I guess you could say, like they have just come out of training in the last month or so, or there's volunteers and militia battalions, and then the actual regular army units that are on this line here haven't seen nearly as much combat as, say, like the ones that are in the Donbass. Now, like they're definitely more valuable than the militia and like some of these other things, but they, and they've been enduring shelling and stuff, which could really, that kind of thing could really beef you up a bit. Of course, like, being used to like taking casualties and stuff like that. I mean, it also could like be demoralizing, but, outside of like the push where they pushed back the Russians, which, there were definitely some battles in this area, but it seems like the Russians fell back in a lot of places to like a prepared defensive line. Like they advanced out, and once they realized they couldn't advance out anymore, like the Ukrainians were showing up and they were putting up a good fight, and rather than getting destroyed, they kind of like kept fighting a little bit, holding off the enemy, while some preparations were made for defenses and stuff, and then they withdrew. And in some places it wasn't withdrawal, they got pushed back. Like it seems like around Mykolaiv especially, the Ukrainians actually pushed the Russians back. But in the north here, not around Kryvyi Rih, like a lot of these towns, there's a couple dozen like tiny little towns that the Ukrainians retook in this area. They basically just walked right in and retook them, like they were abandoned by the Russians. So now there were a few, I'm not saying that about all of them. I'm saying like some of them. I think this town, if it'll load. No, actually, it's one of these two towns the Ukrainians actually pushed the Russians back from. So like the little bit of fighting going on in the past over here, but mainly this has been a stagnant line for a very long time. All right, I'm gonna move on around. Same thing going on with this front line here, just back and forth shelling. Not a lot of assault action, and I do believe that the Russians did occupy a town around here somewhere, but my understanding is like that town was actually like gray zone. Like, so it was in between the lines. Like, no one really occupied it, and the Russians moved into it. So it wasn't, some great victory on the Russian part, and maybe not even a prelude to like an offensive operation. So same thing in the Donetsk area, more shelling. And as far as I can tell, we haven't really seen. If you guys remember, I was talking about this convoy and how some people were saying it was to the north of Donetsk somewhere, like in this area, like maybe like north of Donetsk or like south, east of Horlivka. That convoy still hasn't showed up yet on any of like the footage, or there hasn't been reported like any heavy battles and stuff. And like I said, that's probably the majority of a either a mechanized or a tank division. It's probably more likely from the makeup of like this short video here. It was probably more likely to be a tank division. It seemed like there's more tanks than armored personnel carriers, but we just saw like a short clip of that. And it very easily could have been, like 1 or 2 brigades as well. I'm not exactly sure. I've seen someone do the math on this once before, but I can't really remember. But apparently, an entire combat brigade, if it's moving across land, like it does have a pretty stretched out supply line. I don't know if it's like 11 miles long, but might not be division strength, might be like multiple brigade strength. I believe what you're looking at for a division is about 3 brigades. So 3 brigades of, if it's a tank division, it's got less personnel in it. So you're probably looking at like right around 9 or 10,000. So, 3,000 or 2,500 personnel per brigade. And then you have your brigade headquarters staff and your reserves and your support and all that stuff. So, talking about Popasna real quick, there's been no frontline updates. It seems like, a lot of shelling, a lot of back and forth. The Russians are targeting hard points with their missile forces in the night. So, like, they're claiming to destroy ammo dumps, command centers, and just basic areas of military manpower concentration, which I guess we can look at real quick here on the Russian side. We can look at one of their statements, or their most recent statement. And this is what I was talking about before. Like, most briefings by the Russian Ministry of Defense, they don't really talk about, where their activities are. They just give like a catalog of targets that they hit or attempted to hit overnight. And you can assume that like some of these failed and they didn't actually destroy what they wanted to destroy, but just the sheer volume of attacks that they launch every night, it's very apparent that Russian air forces, Russian missile forces, and artillery forces do enormous attritional damage to the Ukrainians, day and night. But and as far as the estimated vehicle and equipment losses, I don't pay attention to these for either side. Both sides put out some pretty bullshit numbers, to be honest with you. Like the Ukrainians, for example, saying that they've killed 28,000 Russians soldiers, not killed and injured, is an outrageous claim. If you ask me, like it's clearly is, and they're going off of those numbers. Talking about the Ukrainians right now, they talk about those numbers of killed Russians based on like the original numbers. If you guys remember, in the early days of war, they had like a catalog where every day they'd add to it, estimated losses that they'd inflicted on the Russians, and they never updated that, and they never went back and made any retractions on anything. And it was actually towards the end of April, the British Ministry of Defense gave a real estimate, and they said that it's likely that the Russians had lost between 12 and 15,000 KIA. And when both sides are talking about, when they say the Russians, they mean the Russians plus DPR plus LPR plus any additional forces that they've raised in Kherson and Zaporizhia, which I'm not claiming to be a lot. Probably at best, 2,000 or 3,000. I can't imagine that they could find that many more people in those regions to fight for them. but there is easily probably that many in those regions that would. So they're talking about all those losses inflicted, but when Russia talks about their own losses, they're talking about Russian citizens, and DPR, LPR, Kherson and Mykolaiv were to a much or not Mykolaiv, Kherson and Zaporizhia to a much lesser extent. They're not Russian citizens. So if DPR and LPR take 5,000 dead each, and Russia takes 5,000 dead, and then the British are going to report 15,000 dead, but in reality, Russia's like, oh, we've only lost 5,000, and this is like a strategy they use. They're not going to report on losses by Donetsk and Lugansk, and Donetsk and Lugansk are probably not going to report on their own losses either. It's just very unlikely. They're not really like, they're basically kind of like, they have like semi like parliament things going on, but they have like basically military leaders that like run both countries. So they're almost like small little warlord states, I guess you could say. Or that's at least what the West would consider them to be. So like they're not obliged to like report casualty numbers and stuff to their population. So I'm not claiming that the Russians haven't taken heavy losses, because they have, but they haven't taken 28,000 dead. And even in that Ukrainian number of 28,000 dead Russians, they're including DPR and LPR forces. And I've seen pretty convincing evidence that the heaviest casualties taken have actually been by the DPR and LPR. Like for some of these like constant attacks, like they'll constantly attack Marinka and out here above Adivka, like just every day, like they're constantly attacking some of these places and they're taking heavy losses. The DPR carried the weight of the operation to capture Mariupol. So this was DPR assisted by the Chechens and Russian special forces, of course, and there was probably one or maybe two Russian brigades, like actual infantry brigades from the 150th Motor Rifle Division, I believe. It might be 150th Motor Rifle Division assisted with this, but I don't think the entire division was there. I think it was just a couple brigades, and that was significant because the 150th Motor Rifle has just recently, in the past 10 years, been recreated. It didn't exist for a while, but it's been risen up inside of both the Soviet Army and the Russian Army 3 times now. And the first time was early in the counteroffensive of I believe Operation Bagration on the Russian side, and then they got folded into another unit and they lost their designation, and then once again they regained their designation when shortly before, or it was sometime when Russia had made it to Poland, and then the 150th, I believe, actually assaulted the Reichstag, and someone from the 150th placed the Soviet flag over the German parliament. So it was a very famous division, and it was probably symbolically placed in Mariupol to help with that assault. But the bulk of the assault seems to be carried out by the DPR militia. So, back to Popasna, not a lot of gains here. It seems like the front lines are stabling, which gives both sides an opportunity to resupply and put more troops in place for another offensive. And if you missed my video yesterday, I basically talked about, I used the analogy of like run game in football, and you want to pin down all these other Ukrainian brigades, and you want to get your ball carrier on a one-on-one with the weakest man on the other team. And right now, the weakest man is definitely the 24th Brigade. It's taken extremely heavy losses. Originally, this brigade controlled this arc from Gorske, Zolote, all the way down here to somewhere north of Troitske. So, it was defending Popasna, and after the breakthrough, Popasna, they had to basically have an emergency evacuation, which they sustained extremely heavy losses during. It seems like it was more of a full rout. And then right after that, these Wagner and airborne and naval infantry troops broke through the rear lines, the second and third echelon of the 24th Brigade's defense. So there's definitely a consolidation going on in this area now, and we're probably likely to see some more attacks. And like I said, this convoy, who knows where it is, but I have a guess that it's going to be engaged somewhere in this area here. It could be down here north of Gorlivka, but it's likely going to Popasna. So moving on down the line, there was a bridge destroyed by the which I don't have a link, but you guys can look up the pictures of this online. I could probably find a link for you guys real quick. It shouldn't be too hard. There's all kinds of stuff in here. Sorry guys, I didn't have this one ready. Yeah, here it is. So this is a bridge going between Lysychansk and Severodonetsk, and it's virtually, there's only 3 bridges here that the Ukrainians controlled, and this one is already destroyed apparently by the Russians. This is the one you were just looking at in that picture. The hole is taken out right here, and there's a video of it as well where it gets like closer up to the train tracks, and there was a truck on the bridge in that spot. It looked like it had some supplies in it or garbage or something. I don't know. There's some, looked like dirty bags in the back of it, like book bags or something. I don't know. But the bridge was taken out right here, so this route is unusable for supplies. And then there's one more bridge down to the south here, which is already enduring Russian artillery fire. It seems like the Russians are trying to destroy this bridge here as well. So you could say that a majority of the supplies that go to Severodonetsk are now cut off, and once this bridge is destroyed, any possibility of retreat for the troops in Severodonetsk area is cut off as well. And on this side of the river, there's about 2,000 Ukrainian troops. So it seems like if the Russians don't achieve an entire encirclement of all of these forces here, they have a very good chance of encircling 2,000 troops, as well as however many troops are in Zolote and Gorske right here. So some good news for the Ukrainian side, I guess. They're still effective at destroying pontoon bridges. And this is actually the only place I've seen this information is here on the live UA map. And, thought we'd talk about it. Oh, yes. So, around Serebryanka, Ukrainian military destroyed a Russian pontoon crossing over the Seversky Donets River near Serebryanka village. So, whether they destroyed it from up close or whether the Russians have made it across the river, again, with advanced troops, like recon units and stuff, and then the bridge was destroyed with artillery, I do not know. I do not know those facts. All I know is that this was reported yesterday. And I remember that also yesterday in my previous video, I told you how there was most definitely going to be another attempt to cross this river. And the fact that there was kind of confirms to me that there's sufficient military projection power by the Russians up here to keep attempting offensives. So there's some people that are speculating that the loss of 50 to 100 or however many vehicles, heavy equipment vehicles the Russians lost here, takes the power out of this Russian advance coming from the north, and they no longer have the capabilities to attempt a crossing. Well, I don't know if that's true or not, but they certainly think they do because they tried it again. So another attempted crossing here. Heavy shelling around this area.
Liman and Sloviansk, and then heavy shelling around the Izium bridgehead. So, that's just a quick update of what's going on in the front lines. It's mostly shelling, but there's some